Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series finale of The Umbrella Academy. Great series finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I'm going ahead and preface this because, I don't know, people sometimes can jump down my throat for the fact is, I really enjoyed the series finale. I've seen the score for this episode. I don't know how the rest of this season fell. I know how some people did not like this season. Overall, I really liked the season. I'll talk about that more at the end, but I really liked the series finale. You didn't. That's perfectly okay. Just please don't jump down my throat because I enjoyed it. And I'm saying it's great. I thought so. This is purely my opinion. It shouldn't influence yours. If you did not enjoy it, you didn't enjoy it, and that's perfectly okay. Just don't shit on me for enjoying it. That's all I ask. Either way, getting into the episode itself. Obviously, we're picking up in the aftermath of everything, and it turns out we see, sadly, that Ben and Jennifer's circumstances are getting worse as it's kind of, it's spreading and they mutate. They look like bloaters out of The Last of Us, interestingly enough. Once again, funny, considering Bill was played by Nick Offerman, so funny, referencing that and everything. But either way, the call has gone out. It was like a radio signal. It's a specific song, and we see everyone just dropping whatever they were doing. We saw a mom who had a carriage with a baby and everything. She left. Everyone's locked and loaded, picking up whatever weapons they can, and you have people in the streets looking like what? As like this massive wave of people gathered around the building where Ben and Jennifer are, and it's like this is it. The cleanse is about to happen. We prepare ourselves for this, and at the same time we have Victor and Reginald show up, and it's like, right, Ben, well, they're running out of time, and Reginald's saying, like, wait, we need to take our shot against Ben, but Victor's like, no, just give me more time. In fact, maybe if we can talk some sense to Gene and Jean, which, to be fair, they were never going to listen because they're fanatics and they believe so wholeheartedly in the mission that they're doing that it's like, right, we're willing to do whatever it takes because we believe in this. There was never going to be any compromise, especially when Jean is not even Jean, it's Abigail, and she's saying all this stuff that she wants to say to Reginald of like, oh, you don't listen, you always think you know everything, which is like, right, the same arguments that she was making is like the same thing. It's so funny because she said like how headstrong Victor is, but it's kind of like, yeah, a lot of the stuff Victor brought up like last episode, she's bringing up this episode. So it's like, it's funny how that works out like that. And I just love everyone being so confuddled, like, what's going on here? And then like, because she's like, oh, just like a man to think he knows everything. But I love Reginald being like, but I am a man. And so are you. I just love that. And then Gene was like, what the fuck is up with you? And he's like, the other Gene's like, nah, like everything's fine. And she's like, no, there's something up with you. And because the fact is she's whistling the tune. Well, I mean, yes, because Abigail is whistling that tune that Cy was whistling. I thought that was a Cy thing, but that might be an Abigail thing. And it makes sense that would translate over in this particular situation. But she's like, you don't like that song. What's going on here? And then G-Gene proceeds to slice and kill J-Gene. I was like, wow, I kind of would... Once again, that's not how I thought that story would have gone. Especially because, well, G-Gene is already dead. But, like, before last episode, I was saying, like, I could have figured, like, there'd be a descent and, like, J-Gene would end up killing G-Gene or something like that. But no... In fact, it ended up being the inverse, but it ended up not being the reverse of that because, once again, it's not really G-Gene. It's Abigail in disguise. So, but, time is running out, and Victor's, like, pressed for time because his dad's only giving him like a 15-minute time window. It's like, you have to see this through in 15 minutes or we're going to go in and have to kill Ben. It's like, for Victor, he doesn't want that, so manages to sneak into the building and finds Jennifer and Ben's not understanding everything. And it is kind of, well, Ben doesn't, he's like, oh, Father of the Year wanting to kill me. It's like, yeah, well, Victor didn't have time to explain. It's like, well, this wouldn't be the first time Dad's done it either, so but Ben's already in an emotional, crazy enough state right now. Last thing you need to do is add more fuel to the fire. But that was, like I said, I keep bringing this point home because I think it's so beautiful full circle, but I do believe it's just like a mirror image of season 2 where it's like Ben came to save. It was a different Ben, but Ben coming to save Victor and now Victor coming to save Ben. I love that. And, you know, just in that heartbreaking moment where Ben's just like, I'm scared, Victor. And Victor's like, me too. It's just like, come on, please let me help you because I don't want you to die. I don't want Jennifer to die either. But the fact is, it's too late. They're both too far corrupted. Like, I mean, that's the sad thing. We never really get much more from Jennifer, like, you know, because all she's feeling is the pull of what's inside of her, you know? So that's all that's really kind of happening in that moment. And Ben's kind of losing himself, even though in those moments he does still maintain enough of himself. Because at the same time, this is all going down. The rest of the family, you know, we have Luther and Diego going back home. And it just, for the first time, Diego's kind of feeling like, right, he's like, this exact wording he uses, like, I felt like I was sleepwalking throughout my entire life, up my life now, but it's like, yeah, I'm married to a beautiful, smart, crazy badass, I got great kids, like, I'm happy for myself. And Luther's like, well, you know, because he's like, right, you broke a conspiracy that not even 5 could figure out, like, you should show more pride in yourself. It is kind of nice for them to have that moment together, because they've, but obviously, like, growing up, they butted heads the most. It was like, right, they were pitted against each other by their dad, like 1 and 2. But it's like this moment, it's like, you know, none of that matters. It hasn't mattered for a long time. And now it's just like, right, we're just brothers, and bringing him home, and Lila's parents being happy. They're like, oh no, like, give us some clothes from this person's closet. And the guy's like, my closet? I don't want his, like, stinky monkey legs. And it's like, shut up and look, come on. And it's just kind of like that family thing of like, he was at Gracie's birthday, so they know that's Diego's siblings. But it's just like, yeah, family. It's probably like one of the first time Luther's been over to their house, so. But it's so beautiful. Like, they're at least some of the families ignoring the legs. It's specifically like Lila's mom and dad are ignoring. It's like, shut up, and just like welcoming it in. And I think that's beautiful. And Diego's so happy to see his kids, and then luckily Lila and 5 show up. But you know, and for them, as 5 puts it, it's only been a couple hours, so it's not like years have passed here. So yeah, let's go in. And Diego's so excited, and you know that kind of probably hurts Lila a little bit too, where it's like, oh, Diego's so excited to see you, and he's apologetic. It's like he's almost like a new man now. Like, probably he's kind of a little bit back to being the man you fell in love with, because you kind of fell out of, like, you never stopped loving him, but like the way he was, just once again, he admitted sleepwalking through life. But he's like, yeah, things are going to be different. And you can tell, like, it bothers 5, because he was saying like, right, things aren't going to be different between you and Diego, but he sees, but it's like all the time him and Lila had together, and now it's like, it's almost this effed up thing, because when you actually think about it, in a weird way, 5 was with Lila longer than Diego was, because they were together for like 6. I mean, you know, she was gone after season 2, popped back in season 3, but they built this life for themselves over these 6 years. But it's like, well, to be fair, Lila and 5 were together, and that's for 7 years. And like I said, it's just a thing of 5 never really had anyone, so it really kind of it kind of like sticks the knife in and kind of twists it a bit in that capacity. So Lila's happy to be back with her family, reunited with her kids. Then Claire, Klaus, and Allison showed up, and you just see Lila so happy and hugging Allison. I was almost like, whoa, what's going on? It's like, right, because your family, and she's just so happy to see you again. So I thought that was beautiful. And just 5, it's just, you see him kind of like, just everything's bubbling beneath the surface, where it's just kind of like he wants to be happy, but this isn't what he wanted. He wanted to stay with Lila in their happy place, and now it's like here he has to watch her like rekindle things with her husband. It's like, no, that was us. Yeah, we might not have been in a relationship nearly as long as your relationship with Diego, but we were together. We built a bond before we actually became something more, you know, for those 7 years. So it's like, you kind of do feel bad for 5. And it wasn't until like partway through it's before Diego even mentions it, but I felt so stupid for not realizing it. But the moment I start thinking it, Diego immediately points out like, wow, I was right. Because I was like, yeah, that, because he figures it out, because he's like, wait, Lila, why are you wearing a bracelet? You don't like bracelets. I tried to buy you one and you didn't like it. In fact, you sold it to like get a vacuum. And it was like, wait, 5, did you like give this to her? He's like, yeah, I made it for her. And it's like, did something go on between you guys? And I think it was Allison that was like, should we go? And Luther and Klaus are eating up the drama, like, no, we're gonna stay, we gotta see this through. It's like, I mean, this is the most like drama infested thing that's kind of happened. Like, this is some deep family drama moment. This, like, they've never had a real like sibling, like they've never had a sibling falling out because of a love interest. I mean, you know, the only thing that came about that would be like Luther and Allison, but Allison never dated anyone in the family. She dated outside of the family, which sounds so weird and incestuous when they say that. But I mean, you get what I'm saying, though. So, but this is the first time that's ever happened in this family dynamic, so it is kind of interesting. But it's like, yeah, when you actually think about it, like what Diego said is kind of interesting and ironic that it is that, and I do love that they did bring that back full circle. Like I said, last episode, that didn't even cross my mind of how full circle that is, because it's like, right, he was under the impression Lila was having an affair. She wasn't. He thought the man that she was having an affair with was this penciled mustache guy, which ended up being 5, which they weren't having an affair. Even Lila said, yeah, at that time, like technically, like we weren't having an affair when you thought we were. It wasn't until well after the fact, and it kind of explained their circumstances. It's still a thing of, man, it sucks, but you can tell Diego's trying to be understanding. It's like, right, you were lost for 7 years. Does it make it okay? No. Does it still hurt? Yes, but it's still more understandable considering their crazy circumstances, especially everything with 5, you know, anything time related with 5. And it's like Diego asked a hard question, like, are you in love with 5? And Lila doesn't actually give an actual answer before they're able to. Shit starts popping off on TV, and they find out about where Ben and is and all that. So I love that they rolled up, but the plan was to go reverse, but the van is it's such a piece of shit. They end up going forward, the brakes don't work, so I love that they just pulled up and stopped right in front of the keepers, and they get lit up, and it's like, cool, 5 has to pop them inside. Well, Lila has to help too, which I'm like, 5 is like, yo, don't touch my wife. It's like, this isn't really the time. I get it. You haven't had time to, a lot is happening. You haven't had a chance to really process your feelings about everything. So it's like, cool, let's pop inside. And they're trying to get to Ben. Ultimately, Reginald decides he has to pull the trigger. He was reluctant. He was waiting, and even when the trigger was pulled and everything plays out the way it does, you see Reginald kind of fall back, because I think a twofold, as he says later on, why did I hesitate to pull the trigger? It's like, well, because you're not as bad as you more often did not seem to be, but also it's like, they aren't your children in this universe, and even in the previous universe, they weren't your children, but you still feel responsible for them because you are, in fact, responsible for them. So it is a thing of, he does come to care for them in his own weird way. I think, especially with the whole Victor of it, like the more time they've spent together, like in these last few episodes. So I think a lot of that plays a role in it, where it's like, he didn't want to have to put Ben down. I mean, who knows if the Reginald who killed Jennifer and Ben originally, like whether or not he felt anything. Who knows if he felt it or not, but it's still just that thing of, damn. I mean, I love that scene too, because at that time, Victor was trying to like remove the Durenga from Ben, but gets like a vision, because I was like, how would that affect Victor? Because Victor would still be infected, because, well, the Marigold would mix with the Durenga in, like the Durenga he's pulling out would already mix in with Ben, with Victor, and Ben sees the bullet coming, because the bullet would have gone through Victor to hit him, but in that moment Ben pushes him out of the way and catches the bullet, and in that moment him and Jennifer meld together. Like, Ben might have already been so far gone that even though he's technically dead, he's still alive long enough for them to meld together. And the team tries to, well, you know, they try separately to fight this thing, but they can't do anything, because it seems like the more they do to this thing, the more powerful it gets, which seems to be the case. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's just their powers either. It's not even just the Marigold in them. It's just like any damage this thing takes, regular bullet fire or whatever, it just seems to get bigger and bigger. It's turning into a full-blown kaiju, and it's like, well, how do we stop this? Especially when Diego and 5 are duking it out over Lila. Just like nothing's working, and they kind of have to retreat. In fact, Lila tells 5 it's over, she doesn't express, well, it's kind of implied when she was like, this is enough, kind of like in that moment 5, it's like, okay, so that's you choosing Diego. So 5 does what he does and bails, which is super fucked up considering everything. But it's like, for him, it's like, well, what's the point of staying here? Who knows if he was going to try and find a timeline where him and Lila can be together, or whether he just wanted to, he was too disgusted being around his family right now, or too hurt to be around Lila. It was a sucky situation, but it's still super sucky for you to bail on your family in that moment. But when he's there at the train, when it finally stops, he ends up running into another 5. And then he runs into kind of a council of 5, which is weird to phrase it like that. But, you know, kind of like it's kind of like a council of reeds from, like, you know, using the Marvel parallel. And these are all 5s from different timelines. And they just made a deli. And so 5, this other 5 explains it to 5 of like what this all is. That basically all these timelines always end the same way. I even love that he has these pictures, like these pictures represent the different apocalypses that have happened. And some of them are the ones we've seen so far over the course of the show. But it's like each one of these 5s has had to deal with it. And they eventually just kind of stopped. And because it's like, right, every time they tried to, it's like, how many times have we tried? It's like 140,000 sometimes. It kind of feels a little Doctor Strange-ish, where it's like, oh, seeing all these millions of possibilities, there's only one type of situation. Kind of has that similar feel and vibe to it with the whole Infinity War / Endgame of it all. But it turns out there was one perfect timeline, which perfect timing for this to come out too, considering all the sacred timeline stuff and the multiverse saga and stuff like this. I mean, because the first season of this dropped, I don't know, wasn't it like February of 2019? So this would have been before Endgame. But that's, I mean, obviously this is before the multiverse saga even really started. So, and we hadn't really gotten into it that much, you know, but it's like, you know, multiverse and different universes, different timelines. It's like sometimes depending on like whatever storyline it is, they're two separate things, but sometimes different universes and timelines, sometimes they get lumped together. It's the same thing when they're not. But either way, when it's all said and done, 5 and his siblings have always been the root of everything. It's like, cool, we are the reason why the world ends, but we're also the reason that saves it. It's just this perpetual thing that would go on and on and on and on, to the point some of the 5s were just like, yeah, let's stop. Like, we can't find an actual solution. And it's like, right, their existence is what set all of this in motion. And so 5 is like, I got to get back to my family to try and fix this. And so, like, it is, you know, it took this one 5 to decide to do what I guess no other 5 was willing to do, or maybe they're not in a certain, like, maybe this is one of 5, this our 5 currently might be the only 5 that's dealing with the cleanse. Maybe no other timeline has had to deal with the cleanse being the end all be all. So it's a different situation. So he ends up going back. We had, like, I'll go ahead and lump it all together. 5 comes back to his siblings and he lets them know what's what. He's like, okay, basically what this comes down to is the Marigold in us. The moment the Marigold entered our mothers and we were all born, the world was all like, everything was heading down this direction of a constant cycle. As long as the Marigold exists in us, the timelines will continue to be broken and will just branch out infinitely, and all these different infinite possibilities of how we are going to bring about the end of the world. As long as we exist, the timeline can never be fixed, because it's always going to be one thing after another. You know, it's our very existence, it was breaking time. So now it becomes this conversation of, well, what do we do? It's like, well, we have to fuse with the Durango. We have to fuse with Ben and Jennifer and let the cleanse happen. But it has to be, every bit of Marigold has to be wiped out from existence. And it's like, when we do this isn't just going to be like this version of us die. We die in every existence. We no longer exist. We are wiped from people's memories like we never existed, which is like the saddest way for that to play out. You're like, Jesus, this is going to be heartbreaking and depressing. And it is. And it's kind of like a, wait, do we really have to do this? Because Kyle says like, yo, I know I used to be all about like that, but I don't want to die. I don't want to, kill myself. And Luther's like, can we find another way? It's like, what happens to our families? Because it is a thing of like, what about Claire? What about Lila's children? It's like, if we never exist, our children will technically have never existed either. Like, is that like what do we do in that capacity? So it becomes this situation of, everyone has their reservations, especially Lila, and even Allison kind of accepts it, even telling Claire like, hey, because Claire's like, no, I want to stay by your side, Mom. But for her, it's like, if there's a chance that you might survive this, like you might still exist after this is all said and done, you need to go. But she's like, I don't want to forget you. I don't want to live if it means I'm forgetting you, Mom. But for her, it's like, I will always be a part of you. We don't know for sure if you'll forget me, but I will always be a part of you. And it's just the heartbreaking thing of both Klaus and Allison having to let her go. But Lila doesn't want to let go of her family. She wants to make sure they're okay and be able to live with her family. So she goes to the train and she's going to leave with her family. But Five tracks after her and it's like, don't do this, Lila. But for her, it's like, it's kind of a thing of like, I don't want to like leave my family behind. But it's like, if Lila goes, if there's even any bit of Marigold left, then this all repeats itself regardless. So it's like, we can't do that. And so Lila seems like she's going to make the selfish choice, but in the end, she makes the selfless one and says goodbye to her daughter. It's like, I'll see you again soon, my love. Like, read to Gracie and don't let the twins fight. And it's just, and now it's just the heartbreaking reality of, well, where do we go from here? And we're like, well, we have to see this through. And the other thing I was talking about before is Reginald sitting down with Abigail, who reveals herself, that it's like, for him, it is the thing, like, it's like, right, I did all this for you. And she's like, no, you did it out of hubris. She's like, I doomed one world with my discovery, what I did. And basically, you've doomed this world repeatedly and it ends up in apocalypses over and over again. So many people shouldn't have to die. There shouldn't be this much destruction just for you. Because she's like, I wanted to pay penance for what I did. I didn't ask you to bring me back, but you did. And it's like, the cleanse is a good thing, And so it is the thing. She's the one that tells him, like, right, you are a good person. That's why you were so reluctant to pull the trigger on Ben. Whereas before, the Reginald before him, before things even got to that point, like, just strolled up and popped both Jennifer and Ben like it was nothing. And once again, who knows if, like I said, whether or not that Reginald felt any guilt over that or not. He does a very good job of hiding a lot of that, I'm sure. But the last time we saw them was them getting gobbled up by the creature, the cleanse. So she's probably back to being dead when it's all said and done. What it means, like, Reginald has that voiceover line at the very end of the episode, but I don't know if that means he's still alive, but he doesn't have the Marigold, so he's just living his life here in this timeline, or what, So that's unclear. But it's like, yeah, he set things down this path. He did wrong, but she's going to correct it by doing right. And it's just, in that moment, them being together at the end, And so the entire family is, well, now, like, the children are all together. And they summon up their powers. And I love Luther's like, so should we go around and talk about our favorite moments together? And everyone's like, what? What are you talking about? That sounds stupid. No, that's horrible. Let's not do that. He's like, right. I love that it meant to be this, like, very, like, arousing moment. Like, oh, we're going to have this touching moment. But it's like, no, in the end, they're going to have their moments the way they would. They'd have their very asshole moments. It's like, he's like, I love, like, Klaus's final words to everyone being like, I love you guys, but you guys are a bunch of assholes. And everyone laughing. And it's just, It's a sweet moment between everyone. Diego and Lila telling Lila, like, I see you. I finally see you. And she's like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. It's sad that it took the end of all this, the end of everything, for this to come forward. Allison apologizing to Victor. I was like, I'm sorry you had to leave Canada, which Victor made it seem like his life was all great. It's like, it wasn't, but it was still the thing. It was his own life that he built for himself. But for him, it's like, no. I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm with my family, And it's like, they never had a chance to become friends again, but it's like, they are still family. We might not, we fight and we argue, but we're still family. And Luther being there with Klaus, where it's just kind of like, ooh, this tingly feeling, as they're being absorbed by the creature. And it's just that final moment, them all together, like, I'm choking up. And it's like, I can't remember who said it, was like, I hope I get to see you guys again. It might be Lila or someone said it, and 5 is like, that would be nice. And they get absorbed, and everything resets every time. Like, we get these shots from over the course of the series from different characters' perspectives as it whittles down to that final timeline, that vision that Victor saw. And it's so beautiful because we see Lila's family, we see Claire, but we also see a whole bunch of different characters. Home dude from the commission who went off and fell in love with the lady. Wasn't she working at a donut shop? We see Handler. Like, we even see, weren't they the Swedes? Because I think the last time we saw the Swedes was, I think weren't they in season 1, and then like only the surviving one was in season 2, or were they I don't remember when the Swedes popped up, but the final Swede was the only one that was alive, and the last time we saw him was at the end of season 2. He kind of let the siblings live and bounced. But now he's reunited with his brothers. Like, it's kind of implying like a lot of the characters that died over the course of the show are just kind of back, living different lives in this timeline. And it's like interesting, kind of like if it wasn't for all of the, I mean, because to be fair, it's like, well, for example, like the commission, as one of the 5s talked about, that was, as we found out last season, the commission was ran by a version of 5 because he was aware of the council of 5s at the multiple timelines and stuff. So he knew like, hey, we need to find a way to get back to that, course correct to that original timeline. But even like the apocalyptic timeline we got to know at the beginning of the series was never that from the very beginning was already an alternate timeline, because the moment they came into this world, like there were so many branched timelines. So it was already fucked before we even got to the beginning of this series. And the title of this episode being very apt, was it the end of the beginning, or the end of the beginning? It's kind of like 12 Monkeys. It's the time travel thing of the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning, and like the whole Ouroboros of it all. But this is kind of like a reset, even more of a reset than the season 3 reset in a lot of ways. It is beautiful, but it's also so sad because you're like, right, that because we didn't see any of them, so it's like none of our 8, that family, none of them are existing. And then like after the credits, which I love the credits being what they are, it's so beautiful. It almost brings a tear into my eyes thinking about it. But it's like, yeah, it's behind the scenes pictures of cast and crew over the course of the entire show, and I thought that was so beautiful. And then the final shot of the show post credits is we see 8 flowers grow up, and I made sure to count them. It's like it's 8 flowers. So there's a little something coming off of them being, I don't know if that's fully marigold, being like maybe on some level, like in some way all 8 of them are together, whether it is like just in the form of those flowers, or maybe somewhere out there, maybe separate they exist. I don't know. It's kind of, that ending can be multiple things. You could look at it, the very like sad ending that it is of they never existed at all, or in some capacity they're still alive out there together, whether it is like in just the energies of the universe, like there's some part of them, because that's like the thing of like energy never completely disappears. It just kind of it always just kind of exists in some shape or form, that all 8 of them are together in some shape or form, whatever that may be. And it's just, there's multiple ways you can look at it. I want to look at it more optimistically, like there's some version of them out there, but maybe those flowers together are all we get. Like I said, I don't know if that's kind of marigold coming off of them, almost being like it still can repeat itself, or maybe it's like, maybe despite, hey, they've been wiped from existence, it's still a thing of this is the reward for fixing everything, that they can be together maybe in this sacred timeline, this one true timeline. Who knows, so there's a lot to that. But I still, once again, I walked away thinking it's a beautiful finale. I like, because I was looking up an episode title. I'm going to say it, like on IMDb I saw the score for this episode. I did not see the score. I only saw the score for like the first episode and the 6th episode. I did not see how the rest of the season fared. I've seen some. I haven't watched any videos because I tend not to like watch a lot of review videos, but it's like the whole, oh, was this a disappointing season? I really enjoyed it. I wonder would people still feel that same way if the season was longer. Once again, I get it. There's a lot of elements I'm like, oh man, I wish we had more time. We could have expanded on certain things. I talked about some of that last episode, and you could call those criticisms, critiques, whatever you want to. It's just, it is what it is. You know, we got what we got, and I'm happy with what we got. I can see people not being, and I'm not going to fight anyone being like, yeah, they didn't like the ending to this. I thoroughly did, and I think it's a sad but also beautiful ending in a lot of way, because at the end of the day, like, they made this decision together as a family, and they did it to protect the people they love and care about, and also just the people they know, the people they don't know. They tried to do the right thing, and then it's not like they've always, you know, they stumbled and they bumbled their way through it, but a lot of times they have always tried to do the right thing, you know, so... Like I said, multiple ways to view this ending, and I'd like to hope and believe in some shape or form the 8 of them, even if they're not family, that maybe they exist out there in this universe and that maybe they'll find their way back. Like I said, there is that ending to season 3 with Ben on the train. Like I said, last episode, that could have been like something else they wanted for this next season, but because they were told, hey, this is the final season, let's wrap things up, they changed what that was, because that was left to be open-ended. Or maybe they did have that idea of like, I don't know how much they had like thought that far ahead and how much they had to change in preparation for the final season, but that could be interpreted as, hey, that, like I said, that's a story, like a route they were going to go, or maybe it's supposed to be, because it definitely isn't indicative of the train. I mean, even though it is, like, it played, like, the train thing comes back around because, the subway thing comes around because of the multiple, like, hub of all the different timelines. But, like, yeah, that was Ben on a train with a whole bunch of people. So I'd like to believe that, like, and I said this at the time, like, you could still, like, pull that forward to be like, yeah, that's Ben living a separate life. Like, the Hargrave siblings never existed in this timeline because they were never adopted. But I like to believe, like I said, they can still be out there just living their lives. And maybe, just maybe, they can find their way back to each other in some weird shape or form. If you've ever seen this Korean series Bugaso Immortal Souls, it's kind of a spoiler, but the series finale for that, I won't talk about it, but the series finale for that, maybe we could have something like that for this series. If you haven't seen the series, it won't mean anything to you, but if you have, like, you'll have some idea of what I mean. But I just don't want to spoil the series, because it's a great series, a great Korean series. I highly recommend you check it out. It's also on Netflix. But either way, that's just kind of where my mindset is. And so, once again, I thoroughly enjoyed it, but if you didn't, I'm not going to fight you on it. But I love this series. I think it's a lot of fun. There's so much laughter, so much tears. Once again, I love me some timey-wiminess, so I've always enjoyed, like, and I love, as you know, I love me a misfit crew, like the dysfunctional family. Like, there's a lot of teams and, stories built around that, and I'm always a fan of those like makeshift misfit teams / family. So that's just one of them things I love most about the show, is its characters and their dysfunctional families' interaction with each other. So thank you to everyone involved in this series, whether it's in front of the camera, behind the camera, whether it's Gerald or Gabriel. I actually don't know, is it Gerald or Gerald from My Chemical Romance? I actually don't know how to actually pronounce his name, but him and like I said, I think it's Gabriel, who are behind the comic that is based on. Like, thank you to everyone for this amazing series. Being able to, and once again, it's also lucky that it actually got to finish on its, like, yeah, like maybe they had plans for future seasons, but being able to kind of wrap things up, which, as we know, not every show is given that fortitude, and especially not every Netflix show is given that fortitude, and for them to have that opportunity, I'm grateful for that. So I love this show, and it'll always have a very dear place in my heart. I would love to kind of track down the comic. I'm not the comic guy. I like comics. I've never like deep dived into comics. This is one I'd love to go and track down and just kind of read, because if I'm not mistaken, like, I think it finished at one point in time, but then like it picked up like a couple years later. I don't know what that means in a grand scheme of like the story for the comics, and once again, just the major differences and the similarities. But either way, I'd be interested to kind of get another view on like this story, so. But yeah, I've run my mouth off long enough. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. good day and goodbye.